welcome to your award-winning The Reasons I'm Broke podcast, bringing you the reasons we're broke every single week through news and headlines ranging from comics, movies, TV, video games, and more. I'm Daniel. The normal rotation would have Palpa-Kelly, Maceo, and so on as we go through, but this week Palpa-Kelly, as in case you missed it, she just gave birth a week ago, so she's going to take a break for this rotation, and I thought it was... Instead of moving forward with our next rotation of guests, of hosts, I said, why not bring in someone who hasn't been on in a while, who a lot has happened in between now and when we were last on as far as the Snyderverse, and he is, as I stated before, and I still mean it, a pillar of the Snyderverse movement. So I want to welcome back Mr. Lord Kojay. Welcome back, man.
Hey, yo, thanks for having me, and thanks for the praise. It's a lot. I don't know if I'm worth it, but yeah, I appreciate it. It's very good to be back.
Always worth it, man. Very happy to give you the kind words as you always do with the rest of the people on Twitter and online on Instagram, Vero. But for any of you out there, if this is your very first episode of the show, the way we format it is we go through this week's news, and then we end it with the Brokehead Block, which is what Lord Kojay and I have been up to since you last heard us, what we've been doing, watching, playing, what's been making us broke. So let's jump right in and explore sector number 558. So this one hits very close to not only your YouTube channel, but to all of your interests and hobbies, Lord Kojay, as WWE and UFC will merge to create a $21.4 billion sports entertainment company. So the new company will be a publicly traded entity, so you can buy stocks in this. It'll be led by Endeavor CEO Ari Emanuel, with Endeavor Group Holdings having a 51% controlling interest in the new company, and WWE shareholders owning a 49% stake. So the companies value UFC at $12.1 billion and WWE at $9.3 billion. The focus of the new company will be to enhance sponsorship monetization, develop new forms of content, and pursue strategic mergers. So the deal will be completed in the second half of this year, pending any regulatory approval, of course. I'm bigger in UFC than I am WWE, but both huge sports. What are your thoughts on this, Kojay? Is this a good or a bad thing for either one of the companies?
I'm kind of up in the air because, as you say, you're more UFC. I'm actually more pro wrestling. Now, much love to WWE, and they do a lot of wrestling, but fans and pro wrestling, they approach part of pro wrestling a lot different. It's more of a spectacle, and they even call it sports entertainment. If you cut the last shows seen, whenever I've seen like live, a pro wrestler would say, "This is pro wrestling," or "I'm a pro wrestler." Then another person live would correct him, like, "You mean sports entertaining?" He's like, "Yes, that's what I mean." Like, they're really sticklers on that, and I can go into much detail about that, but I feel that they use pro wrestling as a different spectacle, and I know over the years of trying to be a fan of them, I'm actually a fan of their competitors or others shows. But the thing is, I noticed that they want to reach out to people who are not fans of pro wrestling, and I feel like they've always kind of catered to, if I get hate for this, but like, I guess the gimmick of pro wrestling, and they sell that as sports entertainment. So they've always been kind of active in outreaching to other, like, even on YouTube shows and other kind of shows on TV, game shows or whatever, where they try and, share their talent and their product out there a lot more. I feel like they're always trying to go along with the sports world and advertise alongside something else, because on the Fox advertisements I see in there, they're in there with them. Sports bar, that you can get exposure to them. So I think they really focus on exposure, and this is really up their alley, especially with how they utilize so many UFC fighters over the years into their show. This just makes sense of where they're comfortable going with to, have the company keep going forward.
It's been a long time since I've watched WWE, but I know UFC I do catch every month. I go to at least the pay-per-views. I go to Ale House with a couple of friends, and we watch the big fights. We watch them every month. And throughout the years, I have seen, and we've noticed the sponsors really change, and not in a great way. I mean, they still have sponsors, obviously, for UFC, but it's stuff that's a little bit lower end. You you go from Reebok to that sports drink by YouTubers. I forgot what that one is called. So it's kind of like a disparaging. It's really gone down quite a bit as far as some of the sponsorship. So that had me a little bit like, all right, they're losing a lot of big name fighters to some competitor MMA leagues, or a lot of them are just leaving, or they end up going to completely different careers. UFC is not the friendliest when it comes to a lot of that stuff, and especially if you're a fighter and you're trying to sponsor yourself with another company, that's a big no-no. It has to be the stuff that they themselves are involved with, and you can't do any promotions outside of that. So if you try to make some money on the side by like, hey, promote our shoes on your Instagram because you're this big MMA fighter, you're not allowed to do that unless it's approved by UFC. So I know that it's a little bit bizarre as far as this acquisition should help them as far as sponsors, but I just hope that the treatment of some of these fighters or contracts will improve under this bigger umbrella. Although I don't know, I don't think it will, because from what I understand, the company that bought WWE, in this case Endeavor, already owned UFC, so it's them just acquiring that other league.
And it's funny it's crazy hearing those details, because the same thing with WWE, because I know they handle their talent a lot differently too, or no, similarly I should say, because a lot of things they can and can't do, and what they should promote, and this and that. Even like, and benefits is sketchy there too. So the treatment of the talent is a little, what's going on here, guys? So it sounds like they two way they operate are very similar. So this is a way to keep both of them rising. That kind of makes sense in the sense of how they approach both their products or entertainment. Because even WWE, they used to have their own streaming service, but now it's all on Peacock. So a lot of fans felt that was a downgrade, but a lot of fans didn't like their streaming service anyway. So maybe it might be an upgrade. Same with that sponsorship you mentioned with UFC. Get my letters mixed up. So it's just funny. I hear the similar song from both sides.
And if anything, this will cause them to cross-pollinate a lot more. Like, let's get this big WWE fighter in the UFC to announce, or to be a part of one of the announcers even, or to show up at the rings. That's going to be a contract, I'm sure, because every month when we go into UFC, I always joke, like, who's going to be the goofy audience member out there? And it's always like this movie star, Mel Gibson, Donald Trump, like they'll just be in the audience. Now you're probably going to see a lot more WWE people in there, and they'll probably have a bigger role. And then vice versa with WWE, UFC fighters heading on over, some of the big champions going over there. Maybe if they're willing to train in the art of, they'll keep it light, obviously, because they have to be pro at this and not get too injured, like legitimately hurt during doing these. But you'll probably see some fights set up, and they'll love it, of course, because their contract will be better, and you'll get some fans hopefully watching WWE and WWE fans watching UFC. So I'm sure they're going to try a lot of that, but I don't think we're going to know if it's for better or worse until next year, once they're actually rolling, once they actually implement some of these changes.
Yeah, it'll be interesting. Because I remember when they had the Fox News, not Fox News, but Fox Sports, they started taking over SmackDown. In fact, the first show they had in LA, that's why I brought my Release a Snare Cut sign. Got it up in the scene. That was cool. Yeah, their first show into that. But that was just a network thing. Things didn't change too much, but you did see how they approached the product a little bit different. Like, it did have a little bit more of that fine, clean. It's very like clean and very high end, larger than life. And I think that's something that WWE really wants. UFC, if they're both in the same, corner, that sounds bad too. But if they're in the same boat, I mean, I think if they play their cards right, they could help each other move up. I just don't see any change with how they treat their talent or their show as an entirety. I see them probably doing different things, but the same way, if that makes sense. So, yeah, I don't know. It is interesting, though, but it kind of makes sense.
Well, we do have some gaming news as well. We'll probably get, I don't know if they still do the UFC games, but we may even get some mergers of the video game side too. But Sony has filed a patent for a new haptic device for PlayStation controllers that would enable the device to heat or deform based on gameplay elements. So this patent describes the use of an elastic member that can change its shape and temperature when pressure is applied by the player's hand. So the technology would use sensors to detect how the player is interacting with the controller and would then respond. So it's important to note that just because this patent exists, it does not mean that this technology will be developed and it could just be seen as unnecessary by players. It could just be a Sony getting ahead of the game in case some of the other players, other companies want to get into it. This was a rumored change back when the Wii was coming out, when they didn't know that it was motion censored. One of the rumors was that the controllers were going to be temperature changing. So what are your thoughts on this as someone who plays games? Is this something that you think would get you more immersed in the experience, or is this an unnecessary gimmick?
I'm leaning more towards unnecessary gimmick because no, I'm just really good as a gamer. The controls are kind of always like, no, I feel like they should always just kind of don't need to reinvent the wheel too much. That I always get apprehensive with new controllers come out because I'm so happy with that GameCube controller. That was perfect. I don't know if I need any heat or changing size or to make it look like me or to where I don't even need a controller. You just think. I don't know about that because I'm still rocking with the NES, that tiny little square or rectangle that still functions after so many years, and it's still one of the best controllers in my opinion. I don't know how you feel, but as a fan, for me, it's kind of disheartening because it's like the focus should be elsewhere. I think
I
in the
agree.
games and situations, it's like heating and such. Oh, I don't know. It's like, I don't know. What are you guys thinking? Or is this something that they're just trying to compete with handheld, or just I don't know. I'm not impressed, and it doesn't really get me going. It's just like I want a really good game, the console to set it up. That's pretty much it. How you feel about it?
I think it's another bad move by Sony Gaming. I think that right now, more recently, they had that VR PlayStation 2 thing that came out, the VR playset, and it's tanking, man. It's bombing for them. It's a flop. So it's a money loss. And I think this is, if they decide to go forward with this, it's going to be another one of those. It's not like the Wii where it's revolutionary, where people will be like, oh, I got to try that out. It's just simply not that much of a step forward, in my opinion, as what motion gaming was for the Wii. That caught the general audience. They thought that was amazing. This is something like Rumble, like the Rumble, which was great, but it didn't catch the general public like the Wii did. You won't get your grandparents or your parents or whomever, family members going, oh, I got to try out that controller and see how it heats up as the gun shoots more bullets, just like a gun would. They're not that curious about it. I don't think they would be. Whereas if you can just move your hand around to swing the tennis racket, like they got really into that shit. So I don't see this being a future in standards for gaming. And obviously the Rumble, it comes standard in all controllers for the most part. But you see a lot of players, especially if they're playing Call of Duty or sports games, they'll turn off the Rumble because that little bit will affect their shooting. That little bit will affect the controls. It's a distraction. So they'll just shut it off completely. I'm with you where the GameCube controller was my favorite controller. It was so comfortable. Give me comfort, give me response. That's all I want out of my controller.
Yeah, because I don't know what they're thinking, but as a gamer, even when I watch movies, but especially when games, when I'm engaged in the game, I'm in there. Like if a creature jumps out at me, I don't need anything to make my hands vibrate to scare the crap out of me, Or like even in like Grand Theft Auto, when you just like, let's see what happens if you jump from a high point and fall to your death or something like that. Or in any game you do that big jump, you feel that drop in your stomach. It's like imagination and investment is there. And again, I feel like maybe they don't trust the audience enough or their own product. But games, they take us to another place. I don't think like how our hands feel heated or a little vibrate, or maybe someone whispers behind your ear. It will change the gaming experience. So I don't know.
Plus, gamers' hands sweat already as it is. That if you're going to make the controllers even hotter, like shit.
Oh, dude, that'd be horrible. Yeah, so be a cooling system. Like, what if you're in like an ice level or something and you're freezing? They need this is gonna trip out people with carpal tunnel and all that stuff.
There can be lawsuits out of this. Like, oh man, the controller's temperature fucked with my hand. It's gonna happen. I think it's too much of a risk.
Why do you want to bring heat into all these little light electronics too? I don't get that part either.
Yeah, that's another thing. Once one of those things catches fire due to that tech, forget about it. And maybe it's not even heat based. Maybe it is the fact that the material bends in a certain way that it makes it feel warmer. I don't know what it is, but I'm not happy with this. Just give me a fine controller, like you mentioned, GameCube, or like Xbox currently has on the Series X or the Series S. Amazing.
Xbox feels nice.
Hell yeah, man. It's really nice. You can use that
And I'm a
controller on
PlayStation guy,
PC.
so you know what I'm saying. It feels nice. It feels nice.
Oh, there you go. That's how big it is. I'm an Xbox guy and I'm saying it, but a PlayStation guy saying it. That's how good that controller is.
Yeah, that is a good one.
Well,
That's a
someone
good
who
one.
has been playing nice with Xbox and Microsoft is Nintendo. And their latest film, the Super Mario Brothers movie, had an outstanding opening weekend at the box office, setting multiple records. So it grossed $146 million in the 3-day opening weekend, $204 million in the 5-day holiday opening, making it the biggest animated opening of all time, beating Disney's Frozen 2. So long, Frozen 2. Super Mario Brothers has the crown now. Movie also broke the record for all-time best IMAX opening for an animated film. And other debuts that performed well this past weekend included Air, which scored $20 million for the 5-day weekend, John Wick 4, who added another $14.6 million to its total.
Wow. Okay. I haven't seen the movie yet, but I am so happy for Super Mario. You know, this is so good, so good.
Another example of gamers cannot whine when they announce a video game adaptation into a film, because there's been so many already that have been solid. Tomb Raider, some of the Resident Evil movies, Silent Hill, now Super Mario Brothers. It's like, how many times are we gonna try to complain when they announce it? It's like, no, like they're making good ones also. It's not all bad, so keep bringing them on. I think we're past that era of assuming that it's going to be terrible. This one was clearly well loved, and it did well at the box office.
Oh yeah, because video games have such lore and story that you can easily make shows and movies out of it. Like, I even love the Mortal Kombat 95 movie still.
Yes, it's good.
It's so good, and it's still in my heart, it's like one of the best Super Nintendo video games. I say Super Nintendo because there's no gore and fatalities because you didn't do the code. So I'm treating it like that. But that movie was so great, and when I followed that movie passionately too, because it caught my eye how many professional martial artists that they were incorporating with it, and just seeing the scope behind the scenes of how they were really paying attention to every single detail and lore. I think you do that treatment with any video game movie or adaptation, animation or series, it'll be very, very fruitful and great. It's something to watch. Imagine you can watch your video game movies and shows while you're eating and doing stuff that rob you from game time. It still hypes you for game time. It's just perfect. I like that whole circle, because we've had some bad ones. That first Super Mario Brothers, the first Double Dragon. No one learns to run when they're learning to walk. So
yeah, exactly. It's
the way it is. It's its own genre, like superheroes are a genre.
It's one of those things where those films, like the Mario one and Street Fighter even, they were done by people who were most likely hired to, it's like, okay, this thing is hot right now, make a movie out of it. Whereas you can tell when you watch the Mario movie that Illumination obviously had fans in its ranks, people that grew up with these games that worked on this movie, because there's a lot of little references in there that only the gamers will understand, people that played the Mario Brothers stuff or even Nintendo games. There's a lot of Easter eggs in there in Mario's room, for example, that if you keep an eye out, you'll recognize a lot of Nintendo properties. So you can just tell that there's care into it, as opposed to, when we were growing up, of just get the whatever director's cheap to, we have this license, let's go ahead and make a little bit of money on it and not worry about how good it is. And that's fine, make your money and do what you need to. But we're in an era now where they can actually put some bigger talent on it, put some effort behind it, and hopefully make some money along the way.
Because these things are like part of like so many people's childhoods. And I think everyone now, this day and age, has had some connection or door to the video game lore and world, like from, back in the 90s, because we're like whatever decade since. And there's a lot of people who are very, very familiar with it. So there's a lot of and when I say a lot of people, not just audience, who are making these movies too. Like you even see some references every now and then in social media, like the Metal Gear Solid, like when someone catches like Yeet! And do that sound effect, but it always goes up. I see it in all the TikTok stuff. It's like, everyone knows Super Mario. So this is good due time coming out. And I'm glad that I don't hear anyone complain about the voice concern. They're just enjoying the movie.
Right, that's the thing. There was a lot
Was the
going
voice an
against the
issue with you?
movie because people complained obviously about Chris Pratt about with Mario. They're now complaining about Seth Rogen as Donkey Kong, where he didn't change his voice at all. We covered that last week on the show.
Mhm.
And yeah, I mean, people were really like, okay, there's some problems here with the movie. And when you watch it, they do explain Mario's classic voice that we're used to, the more Italian, stereotype, and that's in there. They explain it. And instead they go for the more Brooklyn accent for the Mario brothers. So to me, it wasn't an issue. It wasn't an issue either when Seth Rogen sounded like Seth Rogen as Donkey Kong. And same with Jack Black as Bowser. I'm like, okay, none of these actors sounded exactly like the video game counterpart. But when you're watching it, they do it, I guess, animated enough, if that makes any sense, going up and down and getting the emotions right to where it's like, okay, you kind of forget about it. Would I have preferred that they get actual voice actors? Sure, I would have. But when you cast actors like Jack Black, you also get their Instagram. So you get their giant accounts that are now promoting your film for you. So I understand why they go with actors.
Oh yeah, definitely. But also, it's a different format too, because we're used to these characters not saying much. If they do say a lot, we have to read it. In the game. I can't remember many games where you hear Mario talk for a long time, like it's a Final Fantasy X game.
It'd be obnoxious, man, if he talked the whole time like that.
Little spurts of what's it? All that stuff kind of makes sense in a short time. So,
but a whole
I
film
guess it
like
balances out. I don't know if I could do 2 hours of that.
No.
What I'm saying? But again, I would argue that's not even new territory of having different actors doing the voices differently than in the game. So go close, because I was raised on that Super Brothers TV show, or for Monday to Thursday they would show the animated part. The rest of it had these live actors dressed up in the suits and like, Mario, what are you doing? I don't know. I was over here. I just got on my ragu on my shirt. That like they would talk like that. And then Fridays they would show Legend of Zelda, where Link was like, "I'm sorry, princess." I don't know if you remember that.
Excuse me, princess.
Right. So in a way, we've been there before. So going back to this is not really I never saw it as a problem. Just figure if the spirit's there, the characters will be there and shine, and you see the world. That's really what matters, really.
Let me run something by you, and I'll talk briefly about my thoughts on the film when we get to the Brokept block, but just the last thing I want to ask you on this news story, because a lot of people saw the film, they liked it, audiences did, and they were wondering why critics gave it such a low score. So when they aggregated all of these scores together on the infamous Rotten Tomatoes, it was like at a 54%. I think it started even lower, 40-something%. So people were asking, like, the movie wasn't, it wasn't cinema, but it wasn't fucking an MCU movie. Like, it wasn't terrible. Why the score of 50-something%? And I was talking to Kelly about it, and I'm like, yeah, I don't get the agenda behind this one. And she goes, because it's not Disney. And then I'm like, okay. But then I thought about it. I'm like, oh shit, the Nintendo Land thing at Universal. That's a big thing that Disney doesn't want. They don't like that. That's a big rivalry. That is competition for them. So if this movie does well, that land is already open in Japan. It's going to open here in Florida in a couple years. And if this franchise takes off, which it is, they're going to do a sequel to this. They're going to tie some merch in to the parks and into that land. They'll probably expand that land to incorporate more of the movies or more of the Nintendo stuff in there. Suddenly, Disneyland has a big competitor, not just Harry Potter and Universal, but now Nintendo. And we know that the critics are in Disney's pockets. We've seen it a number of times. Like someone told me on Facebook, they're like, not everything is a conspiracy, man. And I'm like, there's history of this though. We know that Disney has paid off some of these critics. They've admitted it on their own little streams. So, do you agree with that sentiment that it was probably review bombed because so many of these critics are Disney heads?
Oh, definitely. I would totally agree with that, because it's not a conspiracy. It's just a fact that they do a really big battle in the marketing department. Everyone, it's kind of known. Like when companies have a character that they sell through Funko Pops. I know, because I'm a big AEW fan. There is 2 pro wrestlers, Young Bucks. They had Funko Pops made of them. And the success of the numbers that they did was called Disney numbers. So this whole like success of Disney And the movies Disney makes are kind of separate because they are, in my experience and opinion and what I've seen, they're on top of the game with marketing, and that's kind of why they are very, very successful. So if you're good in marketing and you see another product coming up, I mean, you'll market against it too.
Mhm.
And just as you said, all those people who've been bought to say this and all that. I mean, that's a key thing with a lot of critics too, and certain critic houses. Like that's why I don't like or F with Rotten Tomatoes. Like if I buy a movie, it says the tomato score is whatever, I take a Sharpie and I block that crap out, I don't want that in my house. It's just that some companies and critics or a group of critics are tied to a certain company because, if they get extra bonuses, pays or
Mhm.
something, or even better treatment or accessibility to going to certain events, and then they like it. Like even for Mission Impossible, like for a lot of the critics or people who go to first see that, sometimes the company has set them up in like a hotel. They cover this expense and all that. They have a great time. They like that. Then that definitely sways. There's a big business in advertisement. I mean, look at our cell phones. Look at any app we go in. Look at Twitter. There's always ads. And it's mightier than the sword, and they always invest in that. They always have. I mean, shoot, we had to deal with that with the anti-Snyder stuff
Oh,
for the
yeah.
longest time. Yeah, it's interesting to see like something that could provide family entertainment that's animated that also has the ways to enjoy the lore, like going to a theme park and getting extra like, a Super Mario backpack or anything. All these and stuff has been there. It's just I think Disney is just seeing that. Oh crap, they got a theme park too. I don't know if maybe they didn't see where this was going, but the success of a lot of this video game lore, could probably rival them, and
Mhm.
I would welcome it. Because we do need rivalry in a healthy competitive way. Like, okay, us as audience and fans, okay, we have Disney, but can we have a place where we go to for this thing that Disney cannot provide? I
Right.
think it's good, but I think it's also I'm not surprised if they throw dirty deep shots here and there just to kind of nerf the other competition.
Of course, and it seems like it did not work as they are moving forward with audiences. They're breaking records. Word of mouth is going through, and
Yes.
people are going into theaters. Once again, as I said last week, this nonsense of people don't want to go into theaters. They don't want bullshit. Like this is yet another movie that proves that audiences are going into theaters. There's been many movies already that people are willing to go into theaters to watch a film. It's not all streaming and it's not
Definitely.
all renting. And obviously,
Yeah,
with the
I don't have that surround sound set up in my house. I tried, but
yeah, I mean that's the thing. A lot of people during the pandemic, especially, they came out of it and they're like, "Well, I got used to stream." Eventually, they come back though. I mean, there's nothing like going into a theater, and I know there was doubt during the shutdowns of like, "Holy shit, maybe movie theaters are going away," because it looked like AMC was in
Mm.
trouble and all this stuff was happening. And I was one of those guys saying right here on the podcast, like, "I'd missed the theater, man. I love the theaters." And now I'm glad that when I went to see Mario Brothers, that shit was sold out. When I went to see Top Gun Maverick, nearly sold out. So people are going in,
Wow.
and even The Whale, like it was like me and 20 other people. But for a fucking movie like The Whale, before the Academy Awards came around,
Yeah,
and
that's pretty good.
yeah, it's not bad. So I'm happy
Yeah,
for it.
dramas have a hard time.
And I'm also happy for Nintendo as now there's talk about more spin-offs of these films. Shigeru Miyamoto, who's the legendary game designer at Nintendo, addressed the possibility of a movie adaptation of The Legend of Zelda. In an interview with Screen Rant, he noted that there is a, quote, shared vision of creation, end quote, between Nintendo and Illumination, who's the studio behind this Super Mario movie. While he did not confirm whether a Zelda movie is in the works, Miyamoto's comments suggest that the two companies may collaborate on additional projects. So Chris Melanderi, the CEO of Illumination, also mentioned that he's been invited to join Nintendo's board of directors, further signaling the potential for more collaborations. Do you think, or do you want to see The Legend of Zelda film or of any other Nintendo property?
Hell yeah. Yo, I know I definitely want to see Zelda because a long time ago I got fooled on the April Fools.
Oh,
I think
yes.
remember that one?
Yeah, it was it
It looked
EGM or
pretty
game
good. I was
trailers?
sold for a second. I was sold that they were going to make it. Then I was so I'm gonna check it out. Link looks a little doopy, but whatever. And then it said coming out April 1st. I was like, oh, you jerks. It took me a while. For a whole day I was sharing it. I was like, guys, look. They're like, yo, Kojay, it's April Fool's. I was like, oh, man, got me again. That'd be great. Expand all these things. Something that they've never really done a lot, but they could have for a longer time, you know? Like, imagine like a really, really cool Metroid film.
Yes. Make it PG-13
That would like
R.
surprise people, you know?
And it looks like they would be animated, I think, because especially with Illumination really getting in bed with Nintendo, becoming one of the board of directors. So whatever they end up going with, it probably will be animated, especially with how much money this made. But I think you can make it work with a Metroid, make an animated Metroid and CGI Samus. Try to do it a PG-13 if they can. I don't think they would, but hey, why not, man?
Yeah, especially with the animation, because you know animation is used by both like animated films and video games, you know. So a comparison of notes or sharing like maybe metric computer renders of figures and characters and all that should be like it just looks like a nice natural blend, you know. Like, oh, I'm going to the theaters to see a long cinematic essentially, but I think it'd be great, and then you could do so much, and then the movies inspired by the games could also inspire other games coming out too. And then that people could have fun with. It's like, oh, here's the game based off the movie, based off the game, kind of like Ratchet and Clank kind of had fun with there. Yo, I brace it all because it'd be fun. And also what's cool, having it animated with how everything is like, you know, there's a lot of, actors, and then like what they're doing with Luke Skywalker with, you know, having to render his face to look like Luke in like the Mandalorian or the Book of Boba Fett and all that. You don't have to really worry about those technical problems and those royalty things when they're animated. And these characters are already loved as they're animated. So teaming up with Illumination, you know, just put these movies out every other year. We might get a cool Nintendo movie. That'd be great. I would like that.
I think the smart answer, of course, would be for them to go forward with A Legend of Zelda because that's the next most popular Nintendo property. I think that if I were them, I'd go with Legend of Zelda, or I would spin off Donkey Kong or some of these other Nintendo characters like Yoshi.
What about Star Fox?
Now, yeah, that's what I was going to say. My heart tells me I want a Star Fox film. Now, do I think it'll make money? I don't know. Oh, it'd be amazing in IMAX, but honestly, it'd be me, you, and 9 other guys. Because if the last Star Fox game was one of the least selling Star Fox titles of all time, and it probably killed the franchise for a long time. So I don't think we're going to get any Star Fox films anytime soon. Maybe a cameo at some point if they do like a bigger universe, like a Samus film, and then you see an R-Wing somewhere, like that'd be kind of neat. But I think Zelda is the next. That's a good way to do it. That would be a neat way, like as a supporting character. I would not blame them if I'm like, hey man, you got Fox McCloud there as a backup to someone. Fine, I get it, because I know that Star Fox would not do well as its own film. I don't think I'd enjoy it, but I mean, how many other people are really going to go out and see that?
That has to be saved for later when they're like, we need something. Let's breathe life back into Fox. And they'll be like, yeah, let's go for it. So by all means, I hope everything they do, the Legend of Zelda and all these things get successful, just so we can have Star Fox.
That's right. We're now like the same hope as some people were fooling with Justice League of like, you need to buy Justice League so that we get the Snyder Cut. Except not as devious. It'll be like, I'll watch Samus, and hopefully we'll get to Star Fox one day. Hopefully they will have run out of ideas so much with all these sequels that they'll be like, who haven't we done yet? Star Fox? All right, let's give them a movie.
There we go.
There is someone moving forward in another category, which I thought might be like the next action movie of tomorrow, and that might be anime adaptations. Who knows? Anime is extremely popular now. We'll talk about manga sales in a minute, but first, Waita Taikiti, the director of Thor Ragnarok and Love and Thunder, is moving forward with a live-action adaptation of the iconic anime film Akira. Deadline suggested that Waititi's focus is on Akira after completing his work on an upcoming, what I'm sure is going to be terrible Star Wars film. Warner Brothers had previously scheduled a release date for the adaptation in 2017, but it was postponed after Taika agreed to direct Thor Love and Thunder. Anyone unfamiliar with this classic, Akira tells the story of a biker gang in a dystopian world whose lives are changed forever after one of their friends unlocks telekinetic powers. I mean, this probably has the potential, Kojay, to be one of the worst adaptations of all time.
Man, Akira, such a phenomenal movie. Not just because of its story, but also its animation, its performance, its quality, its cutting. Everything is just really great with that movie. But it's also very abstract, and it's very, very like I don't know if you're familiar with the director, Mike. Does
No, not
stuff
at all.
very, very yeah. His films are very abstract. They're like a lot of very brilliant and dark and edgy, and they kind of break a lot of rules of storytelling. It's like a situation. They don't really spend too much time with introducing characters. You're just thrown into the situation or a situation and see how the characters choose things to do or their actions that dictate what's going to happen in the story. At the same time, revealing who they are to you. Like a lot of time, our Western storytelling, there's a lot more of a slower pace of that. These type of things, they throw you right into it, and I don't see Taika Waititi being good director for this type of thing.
For anything.
Like I would honestly give it more to Spike Lee if he's interested in that kind of stuff. But
Zach was attached to this at one point. I don't know if you remember.
yeah, I think Zach could do that because Zach can do stuff like that because he is a fan of a lot of Eastern storytelling and mythologies. Like he took it instead of like taking inspiration for Man of Steel from like Dragon Ball Z, he took it from Almighty Birdie. That's very very specific, and it's not like top trendy stuff. So you need someone like that. And when I was watching like some behind the scenes thing of like on YouTube of Thor: Love and Thunder, one of the actresses was like comparing shots with the directors, like, how could you do this? It doesn't sync up. He's like, I guess I wasn't thinking, or something like that. I'm like, wow, you're gonna give something so complex and layered to someone like that to do a film. I'm like, it bodes double not well for me. But I get it. Maybe Warner Brothers wants more of those Marvel guys on their side so they could do something else later or with the MCU. That's my theory.
Dude, I don't even fucking know who this movie is for because MCU fans aren't going to come out to this because, they're not that loyal to Wida. And anime fans don't like the guy, and they're not necessarily MCU shills, so they don't want an MCU version of Akira, so they're not going to go watch this. It's just another bomb for them. I really do think it's going to do terribly for him, and then Taika is just going to collect his fucking paycheck, and this will unfortunately be one of those examples of this is why they shouldn't do anime adaptations, and it's probably going to be one of the worst ones. And like I'd have a hard time arguing against it, although I love Speed Racer. What was the recent one with James
I thought
Cameron?
Speed Racer was done well though. They honored the critic.
That's what I'm saying. Speed Racer's good, and then Alita Battle Angel was good. There's good anime adaptations, but this will be one that it's like, holy shit! Like, this is how terrible it can get. That I heard was good too. Yeah.
Again, I think something of the scope of these stories. I don't know. I worry if they're just like, oh, it's just anime. No, each anime has certain dramas. Like Kira is at a different level than, let's say, Wolf Children. You need certain types of directors like that if you are going to go live action. Like I'm saying, like Akira has a lot of cinematic and establishing frames or shots. I call them shots. They're the same thing. Storyboards and whatever to me. It's the scope of it's really huge. And I look at a lot of these, especially what Taika Waititi did, and there's a lot of small green screen type scenes and shots. Like, was it the third Ant-Man, the Quantum something? Sorry, that's how invested I am in it. I noticed they had this big scope of the world, but they have these small little like remember in Star Wars, in the end, the very first Star Wars 70s one, when they're getting their medals, they're walking down this hallway, and it's vast soldiers lined up celebrate their victorious contribution to fighting the Empire. Huge scene. Then I see Force Awakens, the ending where everyone's waving off to Rey. It looks like probably an eighth that big hallway room with everyone going, "Yay, victory! We defeated the First Order." Da, da. And I'm feeling this very claustrophobic vibe with a lot of these films nowadays because they're shot in that big or a green screen room. All the other shots are like a short shot of some CGI thing. I really get no sense of these people in a big, vast area or this type of spacing. You need stuff like that for Akira. as if they're going down the streets and all this stuff. So I'm saying you need directors like Christopher Nolan handling Akira, not someone like Taika Waititi, and definitely not a committee. Because I don't
No.
think they understand or know the lore and scope of things really, and yet they're in the business of it. So it's just like, ugh.
Hopefully some of these studios do move forward with decent adaptations, and I think anime and manga is definitely here to stay, and it's only going to get stronger as new data from ComicsBeat shows that manga creators dominated the top sellers list of comic sales in the US in 2022, with Tatsuki Fujimoto of Chainsaw Man and Geiji Akudami of Jujutsu Kaisen among the top 3. So this report from NPD Bookscan reveals that over half of all comic sales stateside last year were due to manga, and that manga's popularity grew year over year from 2021. So that same report also indicated that manga publisher Viz Media accounts for at least 60% of physical sales in the US due to its ties with Shonen Jump. So what do you make of this latest sales update, and have you put any money into manga over the last year or so?
I put my money into pro wrestling lately, so that's the reasons I'm broke. But no, I try and keep up because my nephew's keeping me up to date with Chainsaw Man and all this stuff. And I'm just happy for anime and manga because I feel like they've taken for so many years the torch of the scope of what you can do with comic books and animation, as far as not just being it for kids. You could have a drama, you could have an action, you can have a horror, you could have a serious one. All these different types of themes that you see done in let's say live action films and television. Do that with these formats of comic books and animation. That's great, and I'm glad that they're taking all that seriously and that they're getting all this success. And more of it, they're going to do a live adaptation of all this. Have them do it. I feel like if it's us, our side, the Western side, I feel it's kind of like we're too stuck in. And when I say we, I say the companies out there putting this stuff. They're too stuck in what they've been doing for so long. I don't know if they could do a whole culture change to treat these properties and stories with the right sincerity and maturity, and I guess student understanding of like the lore. Like you have to be a student of this stuff in a way too. So I don't know if they could just do it right. I think the manga companies and all that, somehow they should do it on their end, like make adaptations. Like I know people didn't like Attack on Titan, the live action one, but that was actually really good turn to like Japanese horror of that kind that they haven't done in a while. Still, I looked at the scope of it, and I even though the movie was mixed reviewed outside of Japan or whatever, I feel like the choices that they made are a lot of things that you cannot do over here, and I think it would actually be done worse. So with the success of them, I hope, I don't know, they treat it really well. I don't know. Hopefully, this is a wake up call to get their shit together on this end. But I'm happy for the success of manga and anime.
Same here, especially for the physical sales, because people have apps that they can get, like the Shonen Jump app or Manga Plus, which Millennial Mike was telling me about last week. So it makes me happy that kids these days are still buying comics like manga, physical manga. I know over the last couple years of when I managed the comic shop, manga sales were spiking. They were hot, man. I could not get manga in fast enough. People were buying it up. And I saw the trend go up. I saw when manga sales were just a small little category in the store. It's like, all right, let's carry Dragon Ball Z, let's carry Sailor Moon, the staples of manga. But now it's like towards those last couple of years, I was going through the previews catalog and I'm like, anything that's a number one volume, I'm picking up for the store, because a lot of these readers are like, oh, that's a volume one. Let me at least give that a shot. So one of those experiments was Chainsaw Man, and the owner, he's like, pick up Chainsaw Man. I have a feeling that's going to do pretty well. I'm like, okay. So we did. We carried it and we sold out. Muscles and Magic, I think, was another one that was doing really well. And it's like, that's how popular it got towards the end. And I can't imagine how it is now. And clearly sales are pushing even further than when I was working the shop. So all good news. Good. All great too for comic shops that do take advantage of this, because if they don't, they're missing out on sales.
No, the mangas, what's cool is how they come out kind of like a trade form, Like I like that it's like this little book. volume. Like we have to wait a few months after a storyline is done with like the comics and like let's say DC or Marvel, and then we get that trade. Because also another thing, people like showing off their collection. I know I do. Those mangas, you know, you can just put up. It's a trade right then and there. Good, like gets to the juicy part all at once, and I think that's a good appeal too. Because then when you go through a manga, I think it gives you a lot of time with the 5 point story arcs of introduction, rise in action, and epitome and resolution and climax and all those stuff. I said that all out of order. The enjoyment of a manga story, I feel, is more fulfilling. It's like 6 issues of a 6 month storyline, but only in one go. I think the enjoyment of a manga, they give you a lot all at once. And I think that wins a lot of readers and fans.
For a decent price point too, because it goes from $9.99 to $12.99, so it's pretty affordable. I get that comics are like $3, $4, $5 sometimes, but a manga, like you were saying, you get a full trade paperback out of it. And sure, it's not in color, and the pages are a little bit cheaper, unless you're comparing it to a Marvel book, because those are really paper, like less than paper thin. But I mean, yeah, you get your bang for your buck for $10 and comes out once every few months. If you're a parent. If Leo was of reading age and he wanted manga, I'd be like, sure, what is it? One manga every 3 or 4 months? $10, $12? All right, cool. So it's pretty affordable when it's all said and done.
And I like the black and white too. That just makes it great.
Absolutely. And I know we covered a little bit of Star Wars, and this on the podcast on its own, we barely talk about Star Wars, but this was, I guess, a big enough update to where I know some of the hosts have some feelings about this return or this actor being brought back. They announced a bunch of stuff at like a Star Wars con or whatever they call it. And the only one that kind of caught my attention was that Daisy Ridley will reprise her role as Rey in an upcoming Star Wars film that follows a new Jedi Order led by her character. So that film was announced by director Sharmeen Obaid-Chinoy at Star Wars Celebration and will continue the events from Rise of Skywalker. So I didn't see episode 9. I'm a very casual Star Wars fan. I don't hate the films. I don't love them. They're just Star Wars films to me. But did you have any opinions on the return of this character and more or less Disney choosing to go back to this trilogy, which was very controversial, as opposed to, I know they're doing a prequel series, but as opposed to just forgetting this new trilogy and trying to introduce different characters?
I don't know if it's smart, as opposed to it's what they always wanted to do. I get a vibe that they always want to invest in this character. The last Star Wars movie, I just watched it. I was like, oh, what the hell, bro? I like the production of it, though. Okay, I half like the action of it, but the story, I do not like it because I'm not a fan why they went after Force Awakens. I know that whenever Disney does a story, they do it their way. Never do it any other way before. Like, get all their, I guess, fairy tale stories that I call, or Disney princesses ones. Beast, Snow White. These are all stories done before, but they've always put their spin on it, and then that becomes a patent thing. So I think Disney very much has a big pride and a track record doing it their way and promoting their people. I figure that no surprise that they would bring in. I just think that they held it off because of the pandemic and stuff. But I felt that at the ending of Skywalker or whatever, as it came to the end, I realized that this whole trilogy was, if anything, of merit. It was an origin story of character Rey for Star Wars. And at the end of it, I got the feeling how they presented the character, that this new character born from Disney, inserted in the Star Wars world, is now, through Disney's 3 movies, has all the powers and abilities to take forth the Star Wars saga in the direction that they want to do. And and that's the vibe I got from Rise of Skywalker, if there's any type of theme to come from it. So, because I don't know, I just always come from how they tell stories. The business side, I'm kind of, I'm still learning about that, but I feel like I've always wanted to do this, and I feel like they're just getting ready to have Rey or tell the future of Star Wars. There's a lot of stuff is all in the past. The whole sequel trilogy has pretty much retconned anything that has been done in the expanded book universe. Writers like Timothy Zahn and George Lucas's blessing and all this stuff. So I think all this stuff is kind of like, even the shows are all just kind of paving the way where Rey is going to take the story and saga And I think that's just something that they always wanted to do. But they never course corrected it to trying to kind of tell otherwise.
Yeah, very
And
cookie
I
cutter
think
with
they're gonna
them,
do it now.
absolutely, even with Star Wars. Well, let us know if you're a bigger Star Wars fan than I am on what you think of this return of Daisy. I did ask Jared, who's a pretty big Star Wars fan and another host on here, and he was not a fan of that announcement. But I'm curious if they're all going to check it out anyway. I'd be very curious to know. Let us know as always
Yeah, I'm
on
not a
Twitter,
fan.
on Instagram. Will you be watching
I'm
that?
with your boy. I don't know.
That's a yes.
More,
See,
I'm
Star
more
Wars fans
likely to
can't.
watch a Star Wars thing than the MCU thing, though. That's for sure.
Yeah, well, Star Wars fans will watch it regardless. That's one thing I've noticed, that they will. Star Wars fans hate their thing so
They love
much,
hate
yet
the
they
most.
will watch it. They will always watch every single one of those movies. My old manager at the comic shop, he hated The Last Jedi, and I'm like, man, Rise of Skywalker. Then you shouldn't see it because it's going in a terrible direction. He's like, well, I want to see how bad it is, and I'm like, that's a Star Wars fan for you right there.
Yeah. I can't hate watch stuff. No.
No,
I
me
mean, I
neither.
haven't even seen a lot of the Star Wars stuff,
I-
anyways.
I'd be caught up on the MCU if I were hate watching.
No, I can't even do that. Ant-Man, Quantum something. That was like the last one I saw, and before that was Doctor
Oof.
Strange. And I threw in the hat after
Why?
that. I was like, well, I didn't pay for it. A friend is a Marvel fan.
No,
and
man,
was like,
that's not even
like,
worth
"I'll
your
pay."
time, man.
I was like, all right, fine, I'll go. But I was like, we snuck in burritos. I was enjoying my burrito the whole time.
People
Yeah.
have offered to pay for MCU films for me. I used to, when I worked at the comic shop, the owner would always buy us the tickets. And after a while, I was like, I can't watch any more of these, man. They're terrible. And he's like, come on, it's not costing you anything. I'm like, it's costing me 2 hours. I'm just going to be mad at the end of it. Fuck that. No, you can pay for my ticket. I'm not fucking going.
Yeah, I would rather put 2 hours back in the Skyrim for the 5th time.
There you go. Or watch half of the Snyder Cut.
And then watching, I love that thing.
Yeah,
I even had a friend that offered to buy me tickets to see the Batman. He's like, no, it's
Fuck
not. I was like, nah, I cannot. No. You're asking too much of me. I'm sorry. Even though you're paying, that's too much. Give that to charity. That'd be better.
Right, that's a Hamada production. And another film that would have been a Hamada umbrella movie would have been Nightwing, as Chris McKay, the director who was attached to this film, revealed in a recent interview with Uprocks that the project has been deprioritized but not canceled. McKay said that the film was put on the back burner due to other priorities and regime changes at DC. However, he expressed interest in making the film in the new DC universe led by alleged pedo gun and Peter Safran. I think Chris McKay is going to be in for a pretty rude awakening, as when James Gunn decides to do his own Nightwing in his own universe, I doubt he's going to involve Chris McKay. Exactly. No, absolutely. And it's going to star his fucking wife. She's going to be Nightwing. And Chris McKay won't be involved at all. And he's going to be upset about it.
I wouldn't be surprised, Mr. Chris McKay, this is out for you, if they cancel it. Because deprioritize, I think they're being very careful with their words.
Mm-hmm.
They deprioritized Batgirl and a bunch of stuff in the past,
That's right.
Maybe deprioritize is a new word that they're doing to escape heat from certain things, because a lot of things have changed since, or not changed since James Gunn has been taking over. And I don't know. I forgot this Nightwing movie was being made anyways.
Same director, I think, he wrote the Lego movie, Lego Batman, I think. He was involved in some way, wasn't he?
Yeah. That's where. So again, I think if you're going to do a Nightwing thing, get someone who worked on John Wick, and we'll get a really good Nightwing movie. I think if anything, Nightwing could definitely be a good contender. He's one of those characters that could be in a type of John Wick type of film, but in Gotham and with the Gotham supervillains, but treat it like that or something like that. You know what I mean?
Well, as I told Sam, the other host on here, get ready for MCU Nightwing, because that's what we're going to get.
Because we're getting a bunch of MCU DC stuff, but it always falls flat because DC is not meant to be like MCU.
Exactly right. But and now they got someone who came from the MCU, who only does MCU shit. I mean, I didn't see Pedo Maker, but I heard that it was, just from the clips I've seen, there's little fart jokes.
I can't do that.
Yeah, it's an MCU
I can't stand John Cena either, so it's a double whammy for me.
Well, there you go. So, we're going to get that, but Nightwing now. So, good luck, Nightwing fans. I hope you enjoy it.
No, because also from the clips I seen, I saw this other doofus character with the Peacemaker guy in the scenes. I was like, who is this guy? Then I looked at the credits. I was like, that's Vigilante? Oh, they did Vigilante dirty because
Mhm.
Vigilante actually had some really dope comics. On New 52, he kind of had like this Kamen Rider helmet. Wow, very smart, very strategic. He would piss Nightwing off when he like shoot someone and Nightwing's running after him. He's like, "Well, I just shot him in the flesh wound. He'll live. What the hell?" You know? And he turned him into some other some totally geeky and slapstick and not really taking the character seriously at all. And I don't know, I just couldn't. But thing with James Gunn, man, since Justice League was also created to make DC ready for like a possible crossover with Marvel.
Right.
And that didn't happen. What did they do? Nothing. Later on, James Gunn comes on and he's tweeted about DC Marvel crossover before. So I'm just sitting back and looking. I was like, oh, they couldn't do it with Joss. They'll do it with Gunn.
Mm-hmm.
And Gunn is still in contact with Feige. Sorry.
Lord Feige, yeah.
I don't really see. I just see that again, like the Rey thing, you know. Like, okay, my theory is that they always wanted Rey to carry the future of Star Wars, then for the next like 12 or 20 years. Sorry, Marvel hate watchers. I mean, Star Wars hate watchers. I can't even tell a difference now. Oh my gosh. But I feel like they're just on course to that because they see money in the future. And I feel like DC people shuffled the deck with, you know, Ann Sarnoff and all those people. But really, it feels like they're still on course and go into that direction, get some of that Marvel audience, and then have a crossover. And what better way to do it than to reconstructionize the whole DCU so DCU could fit a Marvel crossover, so there's no issues with like DC people being cooler or more powerful or this and that. They have to fit to the mold of Marvel that as Marvel's created. Having done restructure everything and reboot everything a little bit more harder than Joss's soft reboot, one after the other, and cater it to a Marvel crossover to hopefully desperately save, quote, quote, save DC. Like they didn't need saving at all until they started meddling. Then they needed saving. And now they kind of force themselves to go back in the same situation because I see the same pattern of getting a Marvel guy on over who keeps ties with Marvel. Okay, so Gunn is safe because, you know, Gunn owns every bad decision, every good decision, every success. You know, the studio's like, all right, whatever direction this can go in, you have a guy who can just take all the heat and enjoy it and make it something of it. I think that's something that they couldn't have with Joss. So I feel that they're still on a course to where they always wanted to do since 2017 reshoots of Justice League.
Yeah, that leads perfectly into it because Gunn recently talked about that crossover with Empire Magazine, MCU, and the DC Universe, DC Studios, Marvel Studios, DC Studios. They even have the same fucking name now. Although there's no currently any collaboration plans, Gunn did say that the whole idea has been discussed with both heads of the studios. He said, quote, "Who knows? That's many years away, though. I think we have to establish what we're doing at DC first. I would be lying to say that we haven't discussed it, but all discussions have been very, very light and fun," end quote. So people that have heard the podcast for years, ever since Lord Feige was walking the Warner Brothers Studios lot when he was doing the Pedo Squad, that's when already people like Film Gob and some of the people in our circle of Snyderverse movement people were like, this is already a thing that's happening. They're already discussing crossing over the MCU with the DC cinematic universe, and they're doing it with Marvel people. And that's where, as soon as Feige was in the lot, it's like, okay, this is going to happen. There was already rumors of certain DC characters showing up in MCU movies. As like the biggest rumor was in the Doctor Strange multiverse movie that there was going to be a Batman cameo in there. That supposedly it was going to be in there, and then it got removed after Gunn got put in because plans have changed. He's got his own Batman in mind, and that's going to be the Batman that they're going to use in the MCU crossover. So they're pushing that back a little bit. But they've been wanting to do this crossover for several years now. They were willing to put Ben Affleck in an MCU cameo or whatever. That was the big rumor. And so that's what we're going to get. And I'm not for it. As Stamets said, it's easy to cross them over when you can't tell them apart anymore because the DC films are MCU films.
I was going to say that too.
Like that's exactly
Yeah,
what it is now. And it's like, all right, well, you guys enjoy MCU 2.0, but I'm not in for that. That's not what I got into these DC movies for. We got into it back when they were giving us cinema, things that were,
yeah,
and I get that people say that it sounds pretentious, but I mean, if you understand what it means, you get that it means that it's films that have a little bit more weight to it, films that stay with you for years, movies that people talk about decades down the line. People are talking about Man of Steel still 10 years later. That's the kind
hmm
of shit, not the shit that's forgotten a few days later, like Shazam 2. Like, no one wants to see those. I don't want to see those films, at least. And box office didn't want to see those. So have at it, man. Everyone that wants the MCU and the DCU, like, have at it. But, I'm not going to be there to support it.
Neither am I, because that's not really the scope of superheroes. That's a luxury you do when you haven't done everything, and they've yet to do everything with these characters. They can't see beyond one or two success movies. These corporates, these studios, but as people who are fans of the lore, there's so many sagas, so many stories, so many elseworld adaptations of certain stories that we could see again and again, and or done properly live action, because that's something that they haven't done. It's kind of like, in Snarka, when Cyborg's dad is telling him, you're only understanding the tip of the spear of what you can do.
Mm-hmm.
I feel like this boom of comic book lore, especially with Marvel and DC, who've had so much history over the years of their own lore, this whole big boom and bang is still just the tip of the spear. They could do so much, and to just dumb it down to a quick crossover feels like something you can just kind of nerf anything else you could do after that point, or it'll nerf something for one of the universes, either DC or Marvel. And I don't think in the long run it's advantageous for anyone. It's like a shock story or a surprise. Oh, I'll see that just because of that. But it's a story. Where's this going to take us? And it takes a lot if you're going to make it mean something, And I don't think they have the creativity, people power, the vision to do all that or pull it off. And all the people who can, they got rid of listed, So it's just very concerning and very disappointing too. Just like, okay, to make it fit McDonald's, we're going to dumb down the steak now, So I just don't like that.
Well, let us know if you are in for it. I doubt many of us will be, especially if you listen to the show on the regular. You kind of know what to expect out of an MCU or out of the Gunverse, especially. We kind of know what we're going to get, and I'm just here for the ride for Justice League 2 and 3, and when that full circle event comes about, and if they give us those films and maybe the Batfleck film, then great. I'll be a happy camper. I'll be voting with my dollar. I'll be giving it my money, but I won't be watching the Gun universe. So, but I will say, if they restore the Snyderverse, give us those couple films, I will, as long as Gunn's name is not attached to some of these movies like Joker 2, I'll start spending money again with him. I get that. You know what I mean?
Joker 2, huh?
Yeah, I like Joker 1, and I know that the names are no longer there, such as Hamada, Emmerich, some of these people that Ray Fisher had problems with. But I'm still like, well, Warner Brothers, if you're still not going to restore, though, I'm still not going to give you my money. So that's what's holding me back from supporting movies like the Joker 2.
Yeah, that's where I'm at too. You guys lost me. I'm not going to give you my crazy support anymore.
But we'll see what happens in a few weeks. I'm very, very optimistic for April 30th. I know I'm kind of in the minority with that, but I don't know, man. I'm putting my torch into that one, and it's like my last hurrah too. If it happens, it's going to happen on April 30th.
You think so? I'm going to be there too. So
yeah, I mean, if it doesn't happen on April 30th and Zach is hyping it up this much, then I don't think it's going to happen, honestly.
Yeah, I feel like it's because artistically full circle, it could be a lot of things. Either way, I don't think it's going to end, because the director has always said he wants to do more.
Mm-hmm.
Everything else just depends on legalities if he gets permission to do it. And no matter what happens, I feel like a strong visionary, a strong fan following behind their work, like George Lucas's Star Wars, his first, when he just had only 3 movies, that carried his vision and fan base grew over time. I think for Snyder's work, it could be the same thing. And not going into these movies or voting with your dollar, as you say on the show that I like a lot. Yeah, it's going to be very powerful to make the call, the demand for more Snyderverse more crystal clear and strong. at some point they can revisit it. And if Zach is still able and willing, which I believe he is, he'll make the most magic happen to make it happen at its best because his track record is consistent.
Mhm.
And I believe in the storyteller. Fortunately, these companies I don't have a lot of faith in. It's just like later on, if you just need one powerful voice in the corporation or whatever to give the guy the keys of the kingdom to tell a story, and we'll be good. And whatever it takes to get there, I'm always going to believe in, and root for that.
Well,
However long it takes, I don't care.
I look forward to hearing your discussion or what you thought of that weekend. That's awesome that you're able to go physically to that event. So I'll be keeping a close eye on your Twitter and seeing your coverage, your pictures, your tweets, all of that stuff, man, because that's a once in a lifetime experience, and I'm glad you're getting to go.
Yeah, me too. It's a blessing I get to go too. It was really hard. The first one was amazing too. But yeah, I'll go into detail of this. I'm actually looking forward to seeing a lot of friends I made over the years
Nice.
since the first Snyder screening event and to now. Like my friend circle has gone more fruitful in the arts department, I like to say. And I'm really looking forward to seeing a lot of those guys and girls who are now my good friends. I was kind of hoping you'd go for some. No, because it's so short notice. Make a plan a month ahead to go somewhere. I don't know. Not a lot of people could do that, but I was hoping to see everybody. And that's what I'm looking forward to. But anything he drops of like more of the lore, more of the movies, and any kind of hype, it's going to be explosive. And I think he knows that. I just hope it's not like this is the end. For some reason, I can't believe that is so. It's all the little, like that poster with Superman reassembled.
Thank you.
It just, and after him saying that there's more to it, he just doesn't know when. And I don't see that as a defeatist logic.
No.
Just like keep hope alive, as you say, vote with your dollar and be vocal what we want, and we'll see if we get there.
Yeah, as soon
If not,
as you said,
I am not settling for any Hamada burger or cheap ass thing, this and that. No, I'm not gonna lower my standards just because I can't get my love.
When you said it's not my time to say yet what that means, I'm like, oh, you just fucking revealed that we're getting more fucking movies. I don't know how I'm the only one convinced right now. It seems like everyone else is kind of like,
I'm convinced, bro. I just don't know when.
People are very. I think it's by him saying that. I'm like, he's going. I just can't say it now because April 30th is right here. Like that's when he's gonna say it. Because why else make that poster to not say something on that event day? As opposed to like some other time, it doesn't make sense to me. I think the event day that's what the posters are for. That's what the ASP thing is for. It's for him to. Now, I don't know if it's going to be, you and I are in the same boat. We don't want animated films, and that could very well be what it is. And I don't want it to be, but I think we're going to get a continuation no matter what. I think that's the announcement.
But if it is animated, I want him to go like full on like CGI. Not like, it's straight to DVD animated movies, which some have been stellar, some have been kind of animated choppily and kind of whatever. But I'm thinking like, Final Fantasy, Advent Children, and beyond. Like, I think Zach can definitely tell this story CGI very well, especially since a lot of his best CGI work has been seen in films as being lifelike. So I'm very picky on the animated part. But again, I feel that should be a last resort. Thing I've known, my own experience is that people who love working with someone who cares about the cast, cares about the story, cares about everything he does with filmmaking, that's someone you want to work with because those are the type of people that are rare to find in the industry. And those are the jobs that you want to have where you could enjoy being the character, enjoy making a film, and you feel like your worth is being put to great use and the respect is there. Zach is that type of director and filmmaker, and you want more of those. Otherwise, you get more of these people of a corporate and a community treating you like crap and just doing this, just going through a conveyor belt. I know everyone's got to pay their bills, but it is really good if you could pay your bill and also feel dignified and celebrated for your hard work that you put into these fantasy movies, which essentially they all are. So I think actors can come back. Animation should be like a last resort. But if it is, it'll be at its best. Not again, even live action or animation, settle for less, it'll do its best. I just want him to do it.
Very good. We'll leave it there.
Sorry, I can go on. Yeah.
No, that's perfect. And we'll head into the final portion of today's show, which is the Bro Kept Block, what Lord Kojay and I have been up to since you last heard us. So let's kick it off with you, Kojay. What have you been watching, playing, reading, or what's been making you broke since you were last on?
Oh, okay. Making me broke. I've been dating a lot, so I pay a lot of dinner.
Oh, there you go.
Yeah, man. You gotta be a gentleman. You gotta pay the meal. Unless you're a couple, then you split the bill. That's how I roll. So a little broke on that. But also, I've been I traveled up to San Jose. It's like a 6-7 hour drive for me. See some Japanese pro wrestling. Denise Monet, she won the title. She was also known as Sasha Banks at WWE. That's been taking a lot of driving to these pro wrestling events has been really amazing. But game wise, I've been addicted to that Fortnite. Lately, I've been playing Red Dead Redemption, the first one on PlayStation.
Oh, great
3.
game.
Oh, I love it. And also, I put the saturation all to 0, so it feels black and white. Really cool. And I'm looking to stream that on my channel. Lately, I've been finishing my collection of retro games. I finished it. I finally got Outrun for Sega on cartridge. The whole system set up here to play it. So I've been playing a lot of older games, like Sega's Flashback. If you remember that one.
Yeah, I never played that one.
Oh, that one's it's like a Prince of Persia, but sci-fi.
Okay.
Like the old computer Prince of Persia, where you have to pretty clunky platforming, but by golly, we do it because we love it. Some XCOM, I've been looking to replay Sonic 3. I've been doing full gameplay of all the Sonic games, so I want to put that on my channel. So doing a lot of retro gaming, movies and stuff. I've just been really messing with documentaries of late and superheroes. I've been catching up on Kamen Rider. I love that shit. Yeah, other than that, oh yeah, and there's other responsible bills and all that stuff I've been doing. But yeah, that's what's been making me broke as of late. But mostly getting older stuff has been the hardest, because even my niece, she got into Monster High, and I was like, oh dang, her favorite character is an out of print doll. Without even getting her that one cost like $120.
Oof.
Which is a steal, because that doll was going for $500 regularly. I'm like, wow, dang. And older stuff that's out of print is risky. It's either like $40-$50 for like that Outrun cartridge, Sega cartridge, or like, some crazy like that one. So I think I'm done with getting enough of that stuff. That's what's been killing me. So older stuff is really, I don't know, hit or miss. That's the stuff that's been getting me. What about you?
Well, as I mentioned earlier, I did get to go see the Mario Brothers movie. I went with my son, my brother, and my sister. And my kid, like he gets very emotional with certain scenes. Like he doesn't yet, because he's 5, he doesn't yet comprehend that the character is going to be okay. Like when Mario gets eaten at some point, like he started crying. He's like, Mario.
Oh, but that's precious, man. He cares. I love that.
Yeah. He's really, and I'm like, let's keep watching. Maybe he's fine. Like I'm knowing, like they're not going to fucking kill off Mario. He's fine. But to him, like they killed him. So he was like, fuck,
I'm glad that you said it that way. And instead of like the parent who goes like, oh, it's just a cartoon.
Right.
Dump the whole thing down. I'm glad you said it that way, man.
So like by the end he was happy, because obviously Mario doesn't die. So it's one of those things, and he liked it enough to where he's like, yeah, I'm like, did you want to buy it later? And we'll see what he thinks. Like for me, I'm keeping it very light. Maybe Millennial Mike and I will do a full episode with spoilers. I don't need to see it again. It's not one of those. I don't even need to own it. Like I'd be fine not buying it. If Leo wants it and he wants to, once it comes out, he's like, oh, I want to see it again. Maybe I'll pick it up then, and maybe I'll rewatch it. But it's an illumination film. It's got like pop culture references with the music. So it's very modern as far as like the kids' movies. So it's not really my thing. I guess there was enough in there that I would enjoy. Like I got the little references to Mario, to Punch Out, all that stuff. It was kind of fun, but not enough to where I'm like, oh, I got to see it again. Animation was great. Story was fine. It's just, it's a kids' movie. It's not really made for me, and that's all right. I also got to get my latest set of CGC books. So I actually got those this past weekend, and Bobby was really kind and always sends in books for Scott and I, which saves us on shipping. He gets a little discount on it based on his CGC membership, and he can send in books himself as well and helps him out as far as bulk submissions when it comes to cards. So a couple of the books I got back in, and I shared them on the Collector's Corner of our Discord, but just to anyone that hasn't checked them out yet, I got Batman Battle for the Cowl #3, came back a 9.4, which is the issue in which Dick Grayson becomes Batman. It's also when Damian becomes Robin. I got Department of Truth #1, first printing. That's a 9.8. It's my favorite comic book right now. So I wanted to get the first issue submitted. I heard that they're going to make a TV show out of it. Who knows if it ever happens, but if it does, awesome. I love conspiracy theories, and that's what this comic book is about. And then I got a couple of special Power Rangers issues, like Power Rangers #0 has the Green Ranger helmet. It was a 1 in 50. That came back a 9.8. Another one is Mighty Morphin #11, which is the first cameo appearance of Lord Draken, who's the evil Green Ranger from another universe, an evil Tommy Oliver. And also Mighty Morphin #9, which is the first appearance of Lord Draken. So another important appearance for that character. And then the last couple books were just Dark Knight's Metal stuff, the Red Death #1, and the Batman Who Laughs #1, which that issue is the origin of the Batman Who Laughs. These are characters that I think they're going to use in future projects. I mentioned last week that the Red Death showed up in that as a Batwoman character in The Flash, apparently, which is not what the character is at all in the comics. So clearly they still want to use these characters, even if it's for terrible shit like the CW. So I figured it was time to at least put them away for now. And they're great comics. They're great covers. So if I never sell them, there'll always be great collectibles. But if they do, if I find that I'm ready to let them go, then at least I'll be ready to ship and sell. But that's kind of been it, man. And, a good chunk of change there. But, I'm able to sell some off, hopefully on eBay, and make a little bit of that money back.
Oh, that Battle for the Cowl was awesome. I remember when that was coming out. I had so much excitement reading that series.
Everyone guessing who was going to be the Batman, right? Who was going to take over?
Yeah. My money was on Dick Grayson though, but so I was glad that turned out the way it did.
Yeah, I forgot. Like it was like Two-Face was up for it. Azrael. There was, I think, Jason Todd as well wanted to take over the Cowl, and it makes sense looking back on it now that they would go with Dick Grayson because, yeah, he's the next in line. He's experienced. He kind of knows Bruce better than Damian at that point. And it did happen, we did get, and he ended up being like a lighter Batman where even Commissioner Gordon's like, why are you smiling?
Yeah, dude, I even read a comic where the issue is Two-Face is looking at surveillance or security footage, and he paused it on a scene where Batman was like jumping over some, and they zoomed on his face, caught a little smirk. He's like, that's not Batman. It's like, I love that everyone was really in on it.
Yeah, and Joker knew right away as well.
Like that's really cool about the Batman universe, or not the Batman town, because I remember when Batman broke his back, Azrael was at super anime Batman gear. I remember reading a Catwoman comic. No, Catwoman had her own comic line at that time. It was when she was all in purple and black. I love that outfit. She had a comic storyline of hers that crisscrossed Detectives comic, and then there's a part in the Detectives comic where I know you're not really Batman because you wouldn't move the way you are around me if you were Batman or something like that. Like she even called him out back then. So it's like these people really know who Batman is. That's deep. It's like, man, so psychological in Gotham.
Yeah, it's super good stuff, and I always like that when they do things like that, or when they do stories where there was an annual for Batman by Scott Snyder where Batman was like a future story of he actually just clones himself at the age of 34, which was his peak physical. And he's like, yeah, at a certain age, another clone comes out, takes over as I train him. He becomes the Batman of that era. He gets old. He busts out the next clone, trains him, and they all have the memories implanted of his parents dying. So that's how Batman continues Batman. And I'm like, that's the most Batman explanation I've seen to future Batman. Like, Batman Beyond the Side and all that. I'm like, that's the most thing that Bruce would fucking do. Like, only I can fucking take care of Gotham.
It's so tactical and it's so obsessive, controlling, compulsive, and stubborn. It's perfectly him. All there.
He's an insane man, and I love it.
He is because even a psychologist on one of the behind the scenes of one of those animated films, he's even saying that with all of Batman's flaws, he's actually constructively handling trauma at the best. He's utilizing it to do good, and she broke it down, and I was like, oh wow, that kind of makes sense because we forget that man is also insane. Like if we think about it, Batman is as insane as the villains.
Right.
Reason why he's not a villain is because he's constructively working on himself and to
Exactly.
do good. And that's what really sets him apart. If you think about it, all the other villains aren't working on themselves. They're just letting their insanity dictate them. And in many ways, maybe that's a big lesson for us all too.
Yeah, I mean, they're
Comic
pointing
book
the
wise.
finger at others, and Batman's trying to look at himself. All his
Exactly.
villains
He's
are a
pointing the
reflection
finger
of
at
himself.
himself.
Yeah, and that's where growth happens.
Yeah, his own fear is his identity. That's huge. Like Batman is so deep. I love it. Oh, that's great. This is stuff we missed.
Oh yeah.
Yo, I did get a comic. I got the hardcover of Last Ronin.
Oh, nice. The
Collection.
TMNT one, right? Or
yes, I was waiting for a good trade of that because I want it all together just to read and be all yeah. So I did get that one recently too. So that's
have you gone
very
through it
happy.
yet?
Yeah, I'm halfway done. Oh,
What do you
it's
think so
good.
far?
I love turtles. Oh, I love it. It's a great. Now, I hate when, I mean, it's disheartening when turtles fall because I remember like a year or two before that, Michelangelo was killed, and I remember that storyline. This storyline is I like about it. It's not just a shock value. It always tells the story of what happens after. Like even when Superman died, what moved me the most was Funeral or a Friend, that series.
Yeah.
Where they just focused on all the heroes pretty much handling with losing their best friend, brother, lover, whatever. And I think that's very deep because a lot of the ways of how we will be remembered is the love we gave to a lot of people in our life. And The Last Ronin, where because these guys are brothers, they're not just brothers, but they're best friends, they're family. Have your whole family gone, and then you carry the torch in your actions with them, for yourself. It's really huge, and the fact that it's I don't know if this is a spoiler.
The book's
That
old.
it
I mean,
is.
the book's over a year old by now. If you
All right,
haven't
good,
read
good, good.
it.
Thank you. I wanted to be sure. The fact that it's Michelangelo, like the youngest, most like in a way innocent, goofiest, because he's so joyous and full of life, is the one who kind of. It's really cool seeing him grow up.
Yeah.
The loss of his brothers, but still be him. So it's good to see these characters grow. Characters you couldn't see grow usually, because usually we see Leonardo and Raphael go through the most character development because they're challenged the most. One's the oldest one. I think it's like Leonardo, Donatello, Raphael, and Michelangelo, age-wise. They're the ones with conflict, the conflict that makes them grow. So in a way, those are the two elderly ones. And it's cool seeing that happen with another character of the four. So it's beautiful and well done. I love the art too. It feels very gritty and passionate. And I like that. I like the detail.
Yeah, it's very Dark Knight Returns of TMNT in a way. Not as dark, but very, very much in that same vein. And Kelly and I, when we talked about that book, we were like, the brilliant thing about them choosing Michelangelo to be the last Ronin is that he would be the one most hurt by losing his brothers. They would all be devastated, of course, but he's like the little, he depends so much on them. Without them, what does he become? And that tells the most interesting story, because we can more or less, as you were saying, see how Leonardo or Raphael or Donatello would deal with being the last of their brothers. But Michelangelo, who's probably the most emotional, like I get Raphael is very emotional, but Michelangelo is more innocent about it. You would just really get hurt by seeing that story unfold, and you do see it. And as you said, you see him grow, you see him change, you see him lose a lot of that spark that made him the heart of that team in a way. But he has his brothers kind of leading him towards that, that eventual conclusion to the story. And it's a good thing to sit there and watch and read, because it was smart of them to choose that turtle.
Yeah, very beautiful. And it's very, the fact that you chose Michelangelo is very, as we were saying about the heart, it's, because I feel if it was any of the other ones, you could kind of turn it into borderline gimmick or something, or they become crazier versions of themselves.
Yeah.
Like we've seen Raphael by himself with the turtles, and he turns into straight up vigilante, And Leonardo, he is a lone Ronin by himself when he's without the team. He's still, we know what areas he'll go. Then, Dontel goes like IT or something. Dontel we kind of figure out because he's always stuck in the middle, those two. So with Michelangelo, going straight for the heartfelt character, the innocence, you see that growth because we all start innocent. So that's something I think deep down we all relate to as we grow up in life. The first traumas that hit us kind of define us. It's on how we handle it. And it's very endearing and very passionate seeing that with Michelangelo. It's a beautiful story.
Good stuff, man. Well, I'll leave the last one for after the end jingles. So I do want to thank you, Lord Kojay, for coming on and helping with this week's episode, being the guest. But please
Thank
let
you.
them
I
know.
hope I helped.
Oh, you definitely did. And we had some good discussion on it. Let them know about your YouTube channel and where they can find you.
All right. So y'all can find me on YouTube. That's where I do a bunch of my shenanigans and up to date with any ideas I have. There is a lot of hiatus, so you definitely have to hit that bell with me when you subscribe. I'm really dictated by what I'm like. I was making a video yesterday and then I spent 7 hours on it. I watched the whole thing. I was like, I hated it. I'm not releasing it ever. I'm gonna have to do something else another time. But there is some hiatus, but we try and have a lot of fun, or I try to have a lot of fun on there. Video game streams mostly, but I'll do some other content. But yeah, you can find me on YouTube and definitely follow me on Instagram and Twitter. I think those three are my trick. You can find me on Vero and even DeviantArt. I don't put anything on DeviantArt anymore. Those are the top three places to find me. YouTube, definitely. That's the Kojay Netflix world. Instagram and Twitter. I connect, I advertised a lot of YouTube there. But yeah, YouTube, Instagram, Twitter. You can find me there and, say hi. We'll have a good time. Always love to the Brocats on my world and channel and universe. Thank you so much, man.
Yeah, man, there will be links to where you can find Lord Kojay in the description of today's episode as well. So in case you're driving, come on back, swipe over to the description and click away. Otherwise, you can also find us at thereasonsimbroke.com. If you also get your comics or cards graded, in this case cards, Yu-Gi-Oh! Pokemon Magic, head on over to treefroggrading.com and use the coupon code BROKE to get 5% off. So a little bit of kickback for us, and you get a discount on your end for your grading. So that's once again, treefroggrading.com, coupon code BROKE. I've been Daniel this week, joined by Lord Kojay, and Broke at Core, all will be well. All right, so my blood drawn story. Anyone may know that, I don't know if I've told it before, but I tend to, it's called like the Valls Vega effect or something like that, where I get lightheaded when I get a vaccine or when I get blood drawn, and to where I almost pass out. And I guess it's like a PTSD thing from when I was a kid. I don't know. Like I go in and I know this is happening and I'm not scared. But then as soon as like the blood pressure changes from those two things, like immediately my body goes into this defense, I guess, of like shutting down. And so I go in for my annual physical and they order blood work. They do it every year. So I go in for my blood exam and they take the vials. So this lady, this particular doctor or nurse, I don't know what you call them, but she couldn't find my vein. And it's the first time I've ever had that problem. Normally they're able to find it right away, but I know there's a lot less experienced people there, especially with people leaving all kinds of jobs. And, I could just tell by the way she was handling, like, okay, touching the vein here, I'm like, okay, I've never had that. So she wasn't able to find it. The vial wasn't filling fast enough. And she was even moving the needle around inside my arm to try to get to the vein. And by that point, I was starting to shut down. I was like, oh, here we go. Because normally, like, they're done,
no.
like a professional's done. And it's like, all right, a minute later, then I'm shutting down. But now it's like, oh, fuck, I'm feeling it. I'm sweating. Like, I'm going deaf. My eyesight's going. And I'm like, all right, is she almost done? And I guess she finishes the fifth one. And Kelly was there because she knew that I was going to pass out probably. And I guess I didn't hear this, but the lady said, put some pressure on there until she can get the Band-Aid or whatever. And I couldn't hear her. And then I guess Kelly went over and she put pressure on the area. And she's like, yeah, he's probably going to pass out. And she's like, oh no. And like they 3 or 4 people came over and they had ice packs and orange juice. And Kelly's like, he does this all the time. It's okay. He's going to be fine. And the way she said that, I was like, what am I pretending? Like she had that tone of like, oh, he's being dramatic.
No.
And I'm like, that's hilarious. Like it's really funny because I'm like, obviously I'm experiencing all this and I'm going to be fine. But I have the ice pack on my head and I'm just like, oh, leaning against it. And right then, this particular hospital is religious. Over the intercom, the guy's like, all right, we're going to pray for today's prayers. And he's going on, and I have the ice pack on my head. Kelly finds it hilarious because I'm not religious, but it looks like I'm praying alongside because I have the ice pack and I'm leaning. She's like, if I had my phone, I would have recorded because that was so fucking funny. And I'm like, I remember this. I'm like, yeah, I thought it was hilarious too as I'm leaning there, feeling terrible, not passing out. And I'm like, oh, this is so funny because it looks like I'm praying, but I feel terrible. Like I'm not going to laugh. Yeah, man. So that's my little blood work story. Just that it looked like I was praying, and Kelly said he does this all the time. He's gonna be all right, and there you go. The other host on here, Scott, has the same problem, exact same problem. And
Oh dang.
yeah,
Yeah, I
so
just can't look at it. I just gotta look away, then I'm good.
what happens if you look
But
at
yeah.
it? What happens to you?
I get angry.
Oh, you get angry, really?
Yeah, like I don't like them doing that. I was like, that's my blood, give it back. What are you doing? So I know I can't be like that. That's true. So I just look away.
That's
I don't
gotta
like
be,
the whole concept.
yeah, it's got to be like a biological thing of like a defense. Like, hey, what are you doing? I need that. You can't fool your
Yeah, it
body
has to
into like, no, let them.
Yeah, it's I don't know. It's different. Everyone handles it all kind of different and stuff. Because I work in the medical field. I do a lot of nerve tests. A lot of people handle the stimulation of like essentially a TENS unit differently, and it's crazy because some people have like, no, I can't do it, or some people is like crying, or some like, no big deal. It's just we're all wired differently. It's fascinating, man. So no shame, no shame. But I wouldn't mind seeing you pray though.